here. I just thought I would. Okay. So thanks everyone for making time in your agenda for us. You can just let me know when you're all set on your end and I'll hold off until you're ready.
Hang on one second, Mel, sorry.
Maybe HDMI.
All right, try to say something now.
Okay, how do I sound right now?
Perfect.
Oh,
You
yay.
figured it out. Thank you.
Perfect?
Yes.
I'll take perfect.
Okay.
All right. Very good. Well, again, thank you for making time in your agenda for us to be here today to give a little bit of an update. And I want to try to provide a broad overview of what we've been working on with TNC and RITEM over the last several months and where we are, where we plan on going, and where some of the elements are that we have been working on or planning to develop here. And actually, I can't recall who among us that is here on the call or maybe watching the recording have seen the concepts before, but I'm going to try to start assuming that nobody is familiar with them, and then we'll take obviously questions, input, any guidance that you have. I have with me here today Andrew Bone and Ian Law. They are both landscape architects that do a lot of community development and public outreach. And Andy, you want to describe yourself for yourself and Ian? Yeah.
Yeah. So, hi everybody. My name's Andy Bone. For those I have not met, I'm a landscape architect based out of our Springfield office, but I work all over New England, and New York, and even beyond. But I would say the last 15 years of my career is really focused on kind of the ecological restoration, climate resilience world, paired with landscape architecture. And I'll let Ian Law, my colleague, take over. Ian and I have worked together for the past 15 years in general, as well. So Ian, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. Like Andy said, my name's Ian Law. I'm also a landscape architect. My specialty really is in urban planning and urban design, placemaking. And as Andy mentioned, we've worked together for a very long time, and our skill sets, we think, do a really good job of balancing each other out and collectively, tackling each project we face in a real comprehensive way. So we're really excited about this extraordinary project and look forward to working with all of you.
I also have Allison Baranovic. Allison, I won't call on you, but Allison is an environmental scientist out of our Hartford office, and she has been working with others on our sediment investigations upstream, extending up through Elizabeth Webbing, and we've done geomorphic assessments there as well with John Field, who's a geomorphologist. And I shared some of that information with Steph, her colleague, earlier this week. We can speak about that if there's time and there's interest, obviously. And she's also been working with some of our other team members on the permit application materials for Main Street and Slater Mill Dam so that we can get those queued up and ready for some. So with that, I will share my screen and I'm going to try to get my presentation going here. Okay. Okay, let me get into presentation mode here. Right, bear with me and get up to the first slide, of course. Okay. Now I'm going to move this little panel out of the way, and I guess I want to open up obviously the floor to questions as I go through this. I'm going to minimize the screen so I won't be able to see anybody's face or if a hand goes up. So maybe Andy or Steph, if you have somebody that would like to ask a question or make a comment, please just interrupt me.
Will do.
Okay. So okay, great. So we have been obviously working, as I noted, on the design for this, and I just want to make sure that everybody can see the full screen. I have some panels here from Zoom that I can't move. and it's obscuring part of my screen, so just bear with me. I can't even
Looks
grab the
good.
panel and move it out of the way. Okay, thank you. Okay, here we go. So, slide, okay. Okay, as we have noted, we have been, we've done, we're preparing the permit applications and the permitting level design. And PAL has also completed a cultural and historic assessment report for the Apex parcel. That was part of the last phase of work. Of course, we have the same for the city parcel across the street, Main Street, across from Slater Mill and Slater Mill Dam. And so I want to try to outline that. I'm going to overview, as I said, the fish passage structure and the design elements associated with that. And that'll segue into, the fishway being kind of the framework or the skeleton, the landscape and public access improvements that have been conceptually developed. And again, I'll just kind of outline what those elements are. Nothing set in stone, so we certainly want to get input as to what the public wants and the community wants, so we can derive all the co-benefits for the community, together with a master plan that the Pawtucket Redevelopment Corporation is working on as well. And then I'll just outline our scope of service quickly. That'll parlay into the next steps here. But I wanted to just start here with where we are right now, and just our overall intent here is to complete the development and the applications here in the next couple of months. And then when those are ready to be submitted, we'll enter the process with RIDEM and Army Corps. We've had pre-permitting consultations with them to understand the relationship between CRC and RIDEM's jurisdiction relative to coastal resources and freshwater wetlands. And so we kind of have a really good handle on that. Obviously, the new regulations have come out and there's a new portal, much to our delight. We don't have reams of paper to print and hoist across the street. We can digitally upload them. So now Rhode Island is well into the way with other state agencies into the 21st century. So Allison again has been really, maintaining, the protocol, if you will, for what that entails. And certainly there will be property owner permissions that will be needed for that permit application, obviously being the city and the PRA. So we are, looking to consult with them here in the next few weeks as key stakeholders so we can get that process underway. And I'll talk as well about some of the easements during construction for construction and access, some of the sequencing, some of the control of traffic control, and then again during that period of time as well, we'll be advancing the Elizabeth Webbing project as well once that contract is in place with TRMC. So essentially, we have a technical memo that is being compiled as part of our next phase of work, and that will essentially just document the basis of design and the technical responses from the interagency reviews that we've had with National Marine and Fish and Wildlife and NOAA and USGS for that matter. And we've talked about seasonal flow management and the concerns with the Slater Mill and their demonstration water wheel, seasonal flow during upstream migration, downstream migration during low flow periods in the fall, and obviously the Pawtucket Hydro. And I understand they've been bought out. I'm not sure what the current name is, but they certainly have flow concerns as well. So we developed a framework to manage what those flows are on a seasonal basis, and then that'll obviously be geared towards optimizing conditions for upstream and downstream migration. As I noted, we've done a lot of work on sequence of construction and traffic management. I'll share some of those about the PRA, public access, portage improvements, and then the O&M. So with that, this is a concept that, the fishway here, and everybody's familiar with this hopefully by now, but just in case that's not, the only portions of the fishway that are going to be constructed within the river channel as opposed to the previous designs is down here at the entrance across from the discharge from the hydropower facility, where the water will be jetting out of the fishway, creating an attractive plume, if you will. We have some auxiliary water. Yes, yep.
We can't see
Yeah.
the map.
Just have a black screen.
Yeah.
You might have to turn off
Okay.
for bandwidth purposes.
Or if you
I will.
There you
turn
go.
There we
off
go.
my
There you
video.
go.
Thank you. Okay, so there's a lag. I get it. I'm going to turn off my video here and soon. Let me just go to my panel. And I even turned my phone on to 5G, so I was hoping that would help, but let's see. Okay. So here again, hopefully
No,
you can
hey,
see my cursor as I guide it over the.
there we go.
Really slow.
Okay,
Yep,
Yeah,
we're good
you're
now.
good.
very slow. All right. Okay. So here's a downstream entrance, and essentially we have an auxiliary water supply that's going to come in and feed water because you just need a certain volume of water to attract the fish to this entrance. We've had very conceptual discussions about potentially moving this entrance up underneath the bridge if the hydro facility were not to be in operation, but we feel that this flow management control will allow this fishway to operate, and again, with eel pass being achieved by an eelway structure trap within the fishway itself, and with an eel, I'll call it eel climbing ropes and chains at the Main Street Dam, and also ropes and chains at the Slater Mill Dam. So we have kind of multiple avenues for eels to migrate. And then as the fish, herring, alewife, and shad migrate upstream through the fishway, we have an access here for RIDEM staff to come in and perform monitoring and tagging of the fish. And then there's also a conceptual portage and viewing window, if you will, excuse me, a viewing window that's shown here. And really the concept at this point was really just for the access for the Slater Mill to have permanent construction access should they need to repair any part of their mill or their dam as they did a few years ago. And, so that's what that little road over the fishway is, or the crossing over the fishway. And essentially, even though this is shown in a dark hatching, suggesting like pavement or gravel, it's really kind of a reinforced turf, like concrete block or reinforced geogrid, if you will, a surface that would be a lawn essentially for all intents and purposes, but it would be reinforced so that vehicles and heavy equipment could drive on it. So that's a concept here. And the whole genesis of this alignment was this picture here in the top right-hand corner that shows the historic mill race channel. This is, of course, looking up towards the bridge and the dam. You can see the hydrant that's there today in this picture, and you can see this wall in this photo. This wall is right about where the edge of pavement is. So, we realize that forested slope now is an opportunity here to allow the fishway to be constructed in this historic mill race. And we can utilize the tunnel, if you will, that goes underneath Main Street. And so that's part of the concept here. And so part of the concept as well being for one to excavate down to the top of this wall and use this stone bench, if you will, for construction access. Well, why would we build our fishway up to the existing grades and then backfill this whole thing? Why wouldn't we just leave it where it is, allow it to become public access? And then as you continue downstream, you see this transition. This is another opportunity for ADA access from the sidewalk by that fire hydrant down along the face of this wall, and then further down on the fourth side of this photo, the lower bench. Again, ADA accessible, and what would that entail? And we think that it's a great opportunity to realize some of the value of this historic infrastructure, as well as respecting the historic the cultural heritage and facilitating public access to the waterfront here and portage up and down the river. So I'm going to hit the right arrow and Andy, give me a shout when you see two pictures. Okay.
Still
Black
waiting.
screen.
It's still on the
Okay.
map. It's just lagging.
There you go.
There we go.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to skip over that one. I'm going to go right to the big picture. Tell me when you can see the concept for the master plan for the city improvements. And essentially, this graphic that will come up on the screen is really just outlining what the big picture is for the city and their redevelopment goals for the parcels that the PRA now has.
We can see it now,
control over.
Mills.
Okay, great. So you see the chain here in the top left, and the connectivity down to the soccer stadium. And there will be riverfront. There's a bikeway going down over on Roosevelt Avenue. And so again, we see this piece of infrastructure as being something that will hopefully be very congruent and synergistic with all the improvements that are conceptualized here. Within the footprint of our improvements, you can see that they really have green space, kind of just generally depicted on the Slater Mill site, the Slater Mill Park, adjacent to the dam. And you can also see that they envisioned that Broadway for the portion between, from the site down to Main Street would be converted into a pedestrian parkway, if you will. So that again provides another benefit for us with portage from Slater Mill continuing downstream and then carrying the portage boats. You see I have a little bit of a green island there. They show a sidewalk down there by Block B, continuing down to Block D in the waterfront along the river where the downstream portion of the fishway is. And again, so what we see is our template being very congruent with what's being envisioned here. Andy, give me a shout when you see the fishway adjacent to Slater Mill.
Will do.
Okay. I'm down here at the RIFMA conference at URI, so I apologize. I wasn't able to be there in person or have a better internet connection.
Okay, we can see it.
Okay. I'm going to try to hit the arrow 30 seconds ahead of time from here on out. So you just give me a shout when we turn the page. But essentially, this here is just a concept level. This is really just piggybacking on the scaffold of what we had developed before with the access improvements. You see the little kind of a block, an X in the site. This is really just kind of like a conceptual. I call it a subway entrance. It's a way to get access to a staircase and an elevator. But other than that, this whole vault and enclosure, if you will, is below ground and it's below turf grass. So the only thing that would be seen is the fishway at the surface, and I'll show some renderings of what that could conceptually look like, and a little bit of I'll call it a hut structure or a shed structure, and I'll show you what that might look like based upon a similar structure across the river on the Slater Mill site. But essentially, this would all be green space. We have some retaining walls here along this ADA accessible path that winds itself down, at grade until we get down to the river level itself. And you can see where the portage is, based upon the low water condition. That's based upon a record of river levels that have been monitored by USGS. So again, we have portage access improvements there. And again, the whole idea within this, I'll call it subterranean room, is that there's a mezzanine level. It's about 20 feet deep, so it's 2 stories. At the mezzanine level is a RIDEM. It's a secure access for RIDEM staff to get inside the fishway and be able to walk on a catwalk within the fishway underneath grading. And I'll show a picture of what that looks like. And then there's also on the lower level, the fish window, which is at the floor of the fishway. And again, there would be a camera equipment there to video and publish to the website or the internet and do fish counts based upon the imagery that is passing through. Okay, Andy, I'm just going to zoom on down through. You may see a flash of another picture of that blown up. And then hopefully the next one will be the downstream access improvements.
We're there on the downstream.
Okay, great. So over here on the right-hand side, this whole section of the fishway is essentially a tunnel. And there is, obviously room for us to decide what is at the top of the fishway, but, we are concerned about light inside the fishway and attraction or distraction. So there may be some solar tubes, if you will, that, can go down through the sidewalk, like in Seattle. If you walk through there, you see the glass panels and the old, buried sidewalks there. So something like that might be a way to get some light into the fishway. But essentially here, you can see we have the crosswalk that is there now. It's moved up a little bit slightly. And essentially, this path that is shown in the dark dot hatch is another ADA accessible ramp. And there's a retaining wall. Essentially, that retaining wall that we saw in the historic picture from 1969 is the wall that we're going to repurpose and augment as needed based upon its structural condition when it's exposed. But essentially, this will be an ADA accessible path that goes down from the fire hydrant and the existing sidewalk down along that wall. And then we can see a couple of turnbacks here to maintain the ADA accessible grade that continues downstream. That little black line on the right-hand side, I'm hovering my cursor over, is essentially where that transition is that you saw in 1967 or 69 historic photo. And essentially that just allows us to go down to that lower grade. And by the time that we get down to the lowest downstream portion where the existing wall is about 5 to 6 feet above the normal river level, again, we have a couple more turnbacks here that get us down to the low, I'll call it the low tide elevation that would again facilitate portage, take out and put in. So, yes.
Can you, so this is what you're talking about of portage from one side to the other. With those switchbacks, can you explain how open they're going to be? So if I have a 15-foot kayak.
Yeah, even though I'm wearing glasses, I'm looking at these, and when you get the PDF afterwards, you can see it on screen. But I believe that we designed these for a 8-foot wide portage. Andy, correct me if I'm wrong, but a 5-foot is a minimum. But 8 feet would be, normal for portage. And obviously, we're thinking about people carrying canoes and kayaks and potentially going both ways. And we want to think that through, but obviously we're trying to build something, that meets the need, but it doesn't become, overly oversized. We did do a little bit of thinking about the turnarounds at the grades at each of the switchbacks. And again, if you're carrying a canoe or kayak, do you have enough room for a 16 or an 18-foot canoe to be able to go around that corner, and what's the top elevation of the wall? So this again is just a concept level that we're, Andy and Ian really haven't gotten a chance to get started on, but Andy or Ian, do you have further thoughts?
Yeah, so that is exactly the intent. The intent is to make it wide enough that it's easily passable. The switchbacks and grades obviously will have a wide enough landing so that you can get down to them and kind of make that 180-degree turn without having to like lift anything over anybody's head or jockey anything around. It's really just we're trying to give these kind of gracious landings. And as Nils said, like this is at the level of saying yes, we can make it work, but there's definitely a lot of massaging that will happen in this to I'll say soften it up a little bit and make sure that we kind of get those switchbacks to function properly. So yeah.
Yeah, I would say
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say from our experience of portaging a lot of other dams, it sometimes is helpful when there are stairs because you can just lean the kayak or canoe on the railing and walk down the steps and someone's kind of just grabbing the other side. So it seems counterintuitive, but that is actually often useful. Whereas if you have these switchbacks, I understand ADA compliance, and I'm not saying we shouldn't do that, but it's a lot longer of a walk for carrying boats. And I would just recommend to not design walls in between the switchbacks, but instead, if you are doing that, to have just low railings so that you can, again, just put the boat on top of the railings. Maybe the person does the switchback, you get to the top, and then you pull the boat up. We want like the shortest distance possible, basically, because often you're not kayaking by yourself, right? So maybe there are 5 of us, we're daisy chaining those 5 kayaks, so we're 60 feet long as we're trying to get all these boats.
Yeah. And we also could, as we get into this and it evolves, we also could figure out a way to use the landings to add a stair at the landings at each turn to, be able to cut that distance and have the accessible path, but a more direct combination of using stairs. We can explore that.
That would be really helpful. Thank you.
One thing that I didn't really describe here in this initial description is that the fishway is essentially going to have a grading at the top, and the top of the fishway walls will be leveled to the top of those, the top of the wall, I'll call it, which is about elevation 20. You can see it's actually 20.7, which Sean's designed here, but essentially this would be a structure with a grading on top that somebody could walk out. So if somebody comes down here and gets to this landing, this is a whole, a platform, if you will, that is a blank slate for, landscape, benches, viewing, fishing. We just really want to try to develop what the realities are that could be, hardscape, softscapes, plantings, trees, This portion down here is at a lower elevation. It's not intended for public access, but conceptually we could incorporate this into it. What we've designed it now is really a stone armor because this might be subject to inundation during a 50-year or certain flood event with a sea level rise. We didn't really plan for this to be public accessible. That's little trapezoid that is extending into the river. But again, these are all just ideas that we wanted to put out there. I don't know, Andy or Ian, if you have thoughts about this whole area.
Yeah, I think this is something that will certainly come to light as we explore this through 3D and cross sections to be able to convey what the intent here is. But I think it's a very interesting, unique opportunity for people to kind of get right on and next to a fishway to actually look down into it and hear it. I think seeing how it's functioning is a really interesting opportunity. So how do we integrate that in a way that, again, like how do we soften it up and do it in a way that really makes a lot of sense? Nils, I was hoping you had these, but this kind of gives you a sense of like what's underneath it. So I think it helps with these visuals to get a little bit better sense of it. And we'll be working through this to really kind of tuck it into the landscape. Nils, I don't remember if there is a little bit of a curb up to the grading in your concept or if it is perfectly flush with the ground surface.
This is really like it's a form-lined and stained concrete surface on the top and center picture. And we really intended to be level and flush so that it's not a tripping hazard.
That's what I
But
thought.
the top of that wall might be 6 inches above the grass, just so we don't have debris washing in it from runoff and what have you.
Yep.
Nils, can you go
But
back?
again, that's all part of the concept of design. Yep.
Can you go back to the slide with the portage at above Slater Mill?
Yep. Okay, give me a shout when you see it.
Got it. How far is that portage from Slater Mill Dam?
Well, I'm just looking at the stationing here, and it's about 700 to 800 feet, probably 775 feet.
So
Google, no, hold on. The portage from the dam itself, Google Earth shows that that's only about 150 feet, where kayaks would be coming in out of, away from the dam itself.
So FERC recommends 300 feet.
Yeah, you're not getting to the recommended 300 feet without going upstream past Manning Pepperin into that parking lot on the right of the image. Especially if the National Park Service, by the time this is all implemented, owns that dam, it would be extremely dangerous for folks to put in and take out in that location.
Okay. So you're saying that the distance of the upstream takeout or put in would need to be moved further upstream of the dam?
Yeah, it would have to be out of the current project scope into the parking lot where in the conceptual map that you have for Pawtucket, it looks like they're looking to do improvements to the old funeral home that's now vacant and into that parking lot.
So is that property also, well, that's block A. I see that's block A here. Okay, got it. Okay. Good input.
And then I have some thoughts about the downstream portage. So it's my recollection that there's kind of a retaining wall there on River Left. Yeah, right there.
Yep.
What is the plan down to like the surface water cutting in kind of thing, or?
I want to make sure I understand what your question is. You're asking about surface water that is running down the slope where the contours are shown?
No. So right now you can't put a canoe or a kayak in where this proposed access is, because when you get to the river surface, there's a retaining wall, and then it's about
That's right.
10-foot
That's
drop to the river.
That's right. Yeah, so let me go back to the historic picture and I'll try to, on the top left-hand corner here. Um,
Yeah,
and
that's
tell
what I
me
was,
when you see the historic photo. Yeah, yeah, so essentially this wall will have to be partially dismantled,
Okay.
that's the only way you're gonna get down to the river. Without building in the river, and we don't want to build into the river, so.
and then all of the very small buffer that's on that side will just be completely removed. Tree.
Yeah, essentially that whole slope area is gonna have to be, there's gonna be construction access into that area. And it's gonna have to be, part of the restoration plan is to look and see what kind of plants and shrubs and, other opportunities to revitalize this area ecologically once the improvements are done.
So is there a concern, I know you mentioned that's in the floodplain where we're dismantling this wall, you've got a retaining wall running along the river, you have an entrance coming out of that. Is there a concern that during high water, it'll just flood behind that retaining wall?
Yeah, that's essentially the construction and the materials will be resilient to those inundation events. That's the whole concept here. And, I think about this as floodplain restoration. Obviously, it's not providing any meaningful storage, but we're reconnecting this overbank area to the floodwaters. And certainly there's going to be, could be some level of O&M if there's debris that gets in there that's going to have to be removed, but that's all part of the basis of design that we want to explore and see what the interests are and the concerns are so we can best balance them.
But there won't be a concern of like flooding in a safety way. The water is coming over the wall and being released into grass area. It's not gonna get channelized into the portage. That was my question.
No, well, so you can see that we have this dot hatch on the downstream portion of this wall. Excuse me, the portage, and you can see that the dot hatch stop about where the last, the second to the last turn back is. Okay, that is about the elevation of the mean high water in seeing that people are going to be launching from different points along this path, and they, that during the high water conditions, that last turn back is going to be inundated. So again, the design of the walls to allow somebody to put in at the end of the dot hatch portion during those high water conditions is something that we want to think about, and again, address it in the best way that we can. But during flood conditions, it's probably going to, go back all the way up to that black line. Yeah, it's gonna be inundated.
So is that back line, I was just confused what that is a little bit. So is it something that will hold water, so it will remain within those switch
No.
Is
No.
it so that it just
It's a drain line. It's a buried stormwater drain that we're rerouting. And you can see the other dash line with a little circle and a bend in it. Those are both existing stormwater outlets to the river that are going to have to be rerouted. Okay. And I'll try to zoom in and tell me when you see my zoom in.
Yep.
Okay. So there's the top of the arch opening if you're looking across the river, and you'll see this stormwater outlet. This line is below the ground. It's a buried pipe. It has nothing to do with the surface. But you can see this call out here, which is the top of the retaining wall at elevation 20, right here, okay? And then there's a bottom of the retaining wall at elevation 7.9. So this is a 15-foot, it's a 12-foot transition. And that's, again, that transition that we saw in the historic photo. So that when you get down here, this portion, that's about elevation 8. And again, that's why we need all of these transitions here with the turnbacks.
Does this part of the project need to be ADA accessible?
No, I don't know. Okay. Yeah, that's part of my question too, is like ADA accessibility for like signage and education, yes.
And on the other side, where it's more parkway.
Where you're able to, yeah, and that makes sense. I'm having a hard time. I'm a bad visualizer. That's just why I always need renderings, but I don't know if this is necessarily the best way. Do we need to do ADA? Is it required for kayak portage?
Typically, yes, and it will. Sorry, go ahead,
Yes.
Bill.
Go ahead. Our experience is that on the project, Andy, I'm going to be quiet. You can finish. Yep.
No, you go.
Well, we're doing a federal project with ADA access improvements in Heron River and Wellfleet, and all the federal funding that's coming in, that is absolutely required. But again, there's always the opportunity for waivers. But we want to start as a most inclusive and accessible design from the concept level and have the community tell us that it's not what they want.
Yeah.
But there may be other parameters around that. But Andy, go ahead.
No, that was exactly what I was gonna say.
That makes sense, and yeah, we're not trying to limit access, I want people to be able to get to the river
Yeah, I
safely.
just wanted to say it out loud in case, like, because it looks like a lot of disturbance on this side of the river and a lot of length to get down to the river. And I am a good visualizer, I'm trying to visualize getting down there, it seems difficult.
Yeah, I think the thought you mentioned before of like, can we incorporate stairs as well as these turnbacks so that there's a shorter but less accessible route? And
I would just,
can't visualize the part there.
yeah, I would just say that no matter what, you're not down to elevation 8 until you get to this point in the structure. So even if you eliminate these switchbacks, which is great, and I'm sure that Andy and Ian can find a way to do that, you're still going to have to get down to this point before you can, because we're not going to be dismantling a 20-foot wall, to make this 50 feet or whatever shorter. Yeah. Okay.
And we'll certainly do our best to get creative, but the reality is we've got to connect those points, and there's only that very finite amount of space to do it. So I think it's going to be some version of this, and I think we can get creative with including the stairs to make a more direct path. And we can do our best to soften it, as Andy alluded to. And I think we could actually get creative with, as you were describing, maybe having an area where you can set your vessel on something while whether it's using the ramp or the stairs. But so I think we can make it as functional and direct as possible. But we are limited with the connection distance and grade, and as well as the horizontal distance that we have to kind of play in.
Can you send us the high resolution images of these so that we can really like zoom in and poke around afterwards too?
Yeah, I just want to caution that even though we show things in a level of detail, we did that so that we could achieve ADA accessibility. So this may, even though it's designed at this level, from this point with all the numbers on there, it kind of got a little bit of the carts in front of the horse with some of the concept level and high level, thinking that Andy and Ian are going to bring to this project. So.
Yeah, I think that's okay. Yeah, at least for me, when I'm looking at designs, I print them out in the big format and I sit there at my desk with a highlighter and like I really take the time and dive in, and it takes me a long time to understand it. So I'm just having a harder time like giving appropriate feedback. So even knowing that it's not perfect, if I can, it'll help me like think about what are the questions.
Sure.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yep. Just as a point of order, point of you can see that this wall, the top of this wall is at elevation 34, which is very close to what the pavement is up here behind Apex. Okay. And the bottom of that wall is 21. So that's a 13-foot high wall, just to kind of give you an idea of the scale and, the elevations that we're talking about here. And again, Andy and Ian will develop the renderings that will help facilitate, yours and the public's understanding of these concepts as they develop. So. All right, Andy, I am going to show a picture with a fishway conceptual viewing window. Let me know.
Yep, you can see it.
And again, this is just a concept. And again, this is a much bigger facility. I think it's over on the Connecticut River. We just want to allow school kids to come in here safely to, view it, and the community to see it, obviously, in person. There's nothing like seeing a fish in person through a window or numbers of fish moving upstream. Down here at the bottom center, this is an architecturally congruent outbuilding structure that is adjacent to the historic Slater Mill. And is essentially, we would envision something similar to this as being that place where people, or the public, can walk in to access the kind of an industrial lift elevator. It's going to have, chains around it, but it's essentially an industrial lift that could bring equipment or fish in, tubs of water down to the mezzanine level where Rydam staff will need to have access to it, or it could bring, people with disabilities down to the viewing window level. And again, that would also provide access to the staircase, for folks who don't need the power lift. Again, just some visual elements here as an example of what a portage, could look like in an ADA accessible format in a very natural environment. So again, we're trying to use natural materials and natural curves and natural substrates that, again, provide a slip resistant surface so that it doesn't become a hazard for people when it is periodically inundated. Andy, anything else or any questions on this in the room?
I think just acknowledging that this section of the river is obviously very dynamic, and understanding that it's going to need to have a bit of complexity and adaptability as the river, rises and lowers, and still providing that access when people will still be using the river. So, we just want to make sure that it is functional for as much of the time as possible. Obviously, during a massive event, hopefully nobody will be on the river, but during normal, normal good flows, we're anticipating that we still would like this to be usable. So I think making sure that we have something that provides that opportunity is something that we will certainly be exploring and looking for feedback on as we explore that.
So I have another question, and I don't want to throw a wrench in the works. When we had chatted before, we had originally said, okay, let's build this really cool thing, and we're going to have public school kids come down and be able to go to the viewing areas. And then we thought about what that looks like for a really long time. And then we zoomed out and we were like, okay, this is a $19.5 million project. We just want to get the damn fish passage in before we think about all of these frills. And so my understanding was that the budget that went into NOAA, assuming we were to get that money, does not include a structure that the public could enter. It is simply an underground structure that DEM can go to, and it is not made for public access.
This is Rachel. That's correct. So unfortunately, Caitlin couldn't be here because she's sick today. But yeah, between the trio of NOAA proposals that we put in, the construction budget was extremely tight. And as Stephanie said, we prioritized access for DEM, but not the public access to the fish monitoring area.
Well, thank you for that input. I wasn't aware that was not included in the funding, unfortunately. I guess from our perspective, then the mezzanine level would be the bottom elevation. That would be halfway down the full depth of the fishway. There would still need to be equipment down at the floor elevation of the fishway, so there will need to be some type of, at least an instrument vault with a camera and a window that could be used to, photograph and video and monitor the equipment that is passing through. Understanding again that that's not going to be accessible for any members of the public, but it might be a simple 5x5 chamber, if you will, or a 6x6 chamber. Yep.
No, this is John. I think we need to have a conversation with DEM, Fish and Wildlife, and with Brian Sajowski, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, about the vision or concept of the viewing station, just what they want to achieve with such a viewing station. First of all, it's to enumerate fish as they come through, get an idea of the species and numbers. And secondly, it's the ability to sample different population parameters such as sex and age class composition, lengths and stuff like that. We'll come back to you with, I think, some of our discussions and what the bare minimum because of the constraints of funding, what the bare minimum needed will be, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, I just want to add one more footnote. DM just received another unrelated NOAA award. We're in the negotiation process for that. And I just want to flag, as we're continuing to think about the design, that in that negotiation process, we were made aware that for any NOAA award, we'll need to provide a briefing for the Secretary of Commerce. And we can't put anything in there about accessibility, about educational outreach, about climate change. So we need to be aware that in advocating, should we get hopefully any of these NOAA proposals for fish passage construction, that we will need to talk exclusively about economic benefits, job creation, and that could include infrastructure that helps with flood inundation. But I just want to voice that.
Let me jump in. I'm sorry to be so late. Traffic and a errand I had to run, but I want to add that a lot of accessibility is also ramping for kayak and canoe and recreational paddling access, as well as fishing access. I think you can easily couch some of that language towards recreation, and recreation as a known income generator for economic development.
Yeah, absolutely, and we're doing that.
I would also say, I mean, always be incredibly careful so that we don't lose funding opportunities. But as a paddler who has been like in the dark because there's nowhere to take out your boat, it is also a safety concern. We don't have, and that's what we always say, there's not enough access points on the Blackstone. We went through rapids that I'm scared of during the day, literally in the dark, because we couldn't have a place to take our boats out. So access is also very important for public safety and making sure that if a storm does come in and you need to get your boat out, there's a place that you can safely do that. And you're not trying to climb up that 10-foot retaining wall, because that's our other option and that's what we've done before. So I don't have to convince you all, but if we can frame it also as public safety, maybe that would help in some regard.
All very good feedback. Thank you, everyone. I'll continue unless, again, there's a hand up or another question or comment. Just looking at the time turning into the hour. I'm going to try to move through these next slides, and Andy, the next one I'm going to show, give me a shout when you see it, is the overall picture of the various spaces.
Yeah, so we have the
improvements.
overall phasing and access.
Yep. So again, this was developed prior to the development of the access improvements, so they're not shown here, but the whole concept here is a parcel that we hope to have conversations with the city and the PRA relative to temporary access for construction. So we essentially show where those access corridors would be. The areas that are crosshatched are proposed staging and stockpiling areas for construction operations during the period of construction. And again, we would be looking on a calendar basis of, with the permits being submitted and obviously the funding being in place and procurement, doing this, within a 9-month period. Obviously during the low water, the other part about this is that we can construct a lot of this infrastructure during the winter season or the high spring season. We're not really constrained by the July 1st to October 31st parameters necessarily, or those could be included in our planning for construction. Andy, these are some of the pictures just again showing these respective locations.
Yep.
For construction access. And again, I won't spend time on these except to say that we've done a fair amount of thinking about how this project can, the better construction access that you have will drive the efficiencies of construction, reduce the duration of construction, and that's going to affect the cost of the bidding. So essentially that's our goal, is to make this a very, very efficient project to build, obviously from a safety standpoint and impacted traffic. Andy, these two pictures, give me a shout when you see them.
Yep. We're on it.
So phase one, what we call phase 1A and 1B. And essentially the first parts of the project are going to be built below Main Street. And essentially it's going to be an open excavation to start, where we are building on the eastbound lane or the eastbound side, the south side of the bridge, to build the fishway. And that'll be kind of the target point that we meet when we build the later part downstream. Essentially, this will, as we show, entail a detour of traffic of Exchange Street and the crossing there, and then back down around Broadway. But again, this is just concept. We have not had conversations with the city or DOT or anybody else about what this detour would entail. But essentially, this is a detour that was utilized during the last repair. As you can see, it was taken as a snapshot from the last repair and closure of the bridge. So again, this is not new. Once we get down to, yeah, go ahead.
The staging areas that you showed is also part of the RFP for the Pawtucket Redevelopment Agency. Have you gotten a idea of the timeline that they have? Because although it may sit as a vacant lot right now, by the time we get this money and shovels in the ground, that might be actively becoming buildings.
I was wondering.
Yep. Yeah, that's part of the conversation that we seek to have with the city and PRA, so that we can understand timelines and how these projects can be best coordinated to avoid conflicts.
Can we, is that a conversation that Fuss O'Neill is already having with PRA, or is that something that DEM needs to schedule with them?
I believe Jason reached out. John, do you want to speak to that?
Oh, Jason's on board. I see him up. Jason, are you available?
I am. Yeah. Hi, everybody. Yeah, we reached out. I have not heard. It's funny, coming into this meeting, I was like, oh, I didn't hear back from them yet. So I'll reach back out. But yeah, we tried to make contact with them to have this kind of sit down meeting with the city to just kind of talk through this stuff. And you know, we've got a memo that's being developed that we're going to use during that meeting. So yeah, we've reached out. I've not, we don't have the meeting set yet because I've not heard back yet.
Thank you.
So again, I'll just go back in here again. We just have traffic management for phase 1B for the other side of the crossing. And then, you know, the next portion of the bridge or the structures, of course, will be the upstream. And then downstream, this will not entail a closure of the road. But again, we're planning to utilize Broadway, you know, the closure of that to have construction access here on this island where the building is demolished and it's currently vacant. These are just some of the conceptual post-construction operation and maintenance locations that we have identified. These are locations where infrastructure is located, or access points will be located where RIDEM will need to have access for operations and maintenance at different times and different frequencies. But essentially, we're envisioning that most everything out here will be electrically actuated from the central station. But again, that's all part of the design that we're currently working on in terms of the gates and the water control. I think, Andy, this may be my last slide here. Talk about the next steps in our scope that we are currently becoming contracted with over TNC and RIDEM. And really that just, you know, starts with a key stakeholder walkover and kind of a workshop so that we could talk about these elements that we've talked about, hear from the city and the PRA and the National Park Service and other key stakeholders as to what their views and concerns are, what their goals are, so that we can again take all that information and then you know, Andy and Ian will get to work with their team to develop you know, kind of a concept master plan, a revised master plan, if you will, for that will show planimetrically where all these elements are based upon that input. And then there will be another outreach event to again solicit feedback from this group and others in the public. And then somewhere along that chain, there will be you know, a 3D model that will be developed and graphics that will be developed. And essentially what we're planning right now, or what we're scoped on right now, is to develop five graphics that show from a kind of oblique, you know, kind of a bird's eye viewpoint, if you will, what these concepts look like on a realized level. But Andy, do you have anything else you would want to add or describe to what the intent is?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you did a good job, but the reality is that a picture is worth 1,000 words. So the intent would be to really convey the look and feel of what this could look like. But we want to get some buy-in on kind of the concept before we go into the 3D modeling exercise. Just because it will, we'll use it as a tool to kind of help refine things. But ultimately, we want to be able to have a good, meaningful conversation with everyone, and we'll utilize every graphic skill and component that we can to really be able to convey the intent of the proposed improvements.
Do you have a timeline of these? Of what's available then?
Yeah, just conceptually, again, we are reviewing the terms and conditions that we received from TNC. We're going to get those back, tomorrow, so that again we can be under contract. Essentially, it'll be a matter of finding a time when Andy and Ian have identified when they are available to be on the site, but also the other key stakeholders that would want to or need to attend as well to give us the input that we can form the next step. So I would hope by June would be early, but by July we would have that first walkover done, and then the master plan and the modeling. Andy, I can't remember how many weeks you thought it would take to kind of develop the initial revised plan, and then from there some graphics.
Yeah, I would say end of July, August. Once we have the walkover, we'll probably try to dive right into it so that we can really have everything fresh and do as much as we can as soon as we have that meeting to explore these options. And for example, like the portage conversation that we had is super helpful. So like understanding how we can incorporate all that feedback and information is a key part of it. So we want to be able to get as much of that information as we can, so we can kind of come up with some creative solutions on a really tricky site. So I think that's the intent, is to try to get it done as quick as we can, so that everybody can kind of get the buy-in that we need from all the project stakeholders.
When you say walkover, what does that mean?
It's like a walk shop. Or a workshop. It's like a site visit and a conversation with key stakeholders to look at the site. It's a fancy term that we probably shouldn't go away from.
Walk and talk, basically. Just so we're all there together looking at the same things at various vantage points, and having little touch points to discuss things and weigh out considerations. Just a good way to get preliminary feedback and us all on the same page.
And you said that would hopefully happen like June or July.
Yeah.
Can we make that a CAC meeting so that you have this group meeting on site together and working together? I ask that now because we would need to schedule that to either be the next meeting or the one after.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Nils, what is your thought?
I don't know. I want to defer to, certainly we want to make sure that the city's voices and concern is not drowned out. Not that everybody else's input is important. It is not important. I think everybody's input is key. But I think the city should have a front and center seat to share what their concerns and goals are, so that again, they get every opportunity to be very clear with us about what they do and do not want, and how we can best develop a plan that is very congruent and synergistic with what they're envisioning.
I totally agree with you, and I would love for Pawtucket or Pawtucket Redevelopment Agency to attend these meetings. They are on the invitation. So if we can choose a date, and if you can tell us if maybe we're talking to the wrong person at PRA. I know they've in the city have been through some turnover lately, so our previous contacts are no longer part of it. I did invite the only person that was listed on their website as planning, which is their economic development director, I believe. I forget their name. But if we can choose one of those dates, either our next scheduled June or July CAC meeting and just let PRA/Pawtucket know right away, this is our plan, we would love for you to attend, can you come? And if not, we can reschedule that, but at least then you have this majority of the group already having it on their calendar. Besides our June meeting, because it's currently on Juneteenth, which is a holiday, so we do need to change it, and that's our last agenda item to talk about today.
I'll defer to Jay and John as to how they would like to, you know, what their thoughts are. Yeah, certainly we want to support, you know, TNC and Wright and their efforts on this project.
Yeah, you know what, thinking about this and looking at time frames where we are now, we're almost into June. Maybe we could confirm a July meeting for this workshop.
Just sounds like you have a really strong accent. My wax shop.
So our planned July meeting is July
17th.
and I was wondering if that would be amenable. During that. We can change that if needed.
Yeah.
And I think that also with the workshop, it's great, but afterwards having a debrief on the Slater Mill calendar, it doesn't look like we have anything, so we have a second floor space
So,
that we can go inside.
so we could use the
Yep.
facility.
Yep.
Okay, that'd be great. We could park there.
Yep.
So,
Great. Well, thank you, everyone, for the time and the opportunity to share some of our thoughts and for us to have your feedback here. It's been immensely helpful. I'm sure Andy and Ian have notes, but when you do have your notes compiled, please do forward them, and then I'll distribute them as well to our team here, and we'll take everything with you under sincere advisement.
Yeah, thank you. If you're able to send either the slides or in my mind, what's most helpful is like the high resolution of some of those rendering or the plans so that we can really zoom in. I can give you the notes that we kind of chatted about today, and you'll obviously have this recording for reference as well, but maybe we can give the CAC like a week or so to just compile additional comments and get those to us, and I can compile them to you guys. I feel like once we zoom in, we'll realize that we have more questions.
Do you want me to stay on for any other parts of the agenda here, or?
The only thing I would mention or add to this is that Jason did talk about setting up a meeting with the city, PRA, whatever. But prior to that, I think that it would be very helpful for DEM if they had sort of a briefing document that would allow them to discuss with PRA what our intentions are. It doesn't have to be an elaborate 100-page document with a lot of designs and stuff, but just to outline some of the concerns and where we want to go with this. Just a layout of what we really want to do, where we want to do it, including the easements that will be necessary, such as the construction easement and the laydown easement and stuff like that. So if you could find some time to put that together for Jason and his staff, I think that would be very helpful. Jason, you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that's it, John. You know, I think I alluded to it in my email to Pawtucket, that we would kind of, once we get the meeting set up, that we get them something brief to kind of look at. And so, yeah, I think that would be really helpful just to give them something they can look at prior to the meeting and then, yeah, go from there. So that's it.
Great, well, yeah, certainly, I have a lot of materials here. I'm gonna try to consolidate and make it as informative and concise as I can to those points, so we will put that together here as soon as we can.
Thanks, Nels.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye. I'm gonna jump to my conference, but it was nice to meet with everybody again, and we look forward to the next time.
Thank you all.
Nice to meet you all. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
I've seen a lot of their stuff. It's outstanding. So, thing to do.
So, other things on our agenda, I might just skip ahead for a second and note that for the Fish Migration Parade is on Sunday. Please join us. We look forward to seeing you all. And Kaylee put together this great flyer. So we're making like goodie bags for everybody, and thank you to everybody that's provided materials to put in there. So we have like the 41 North magazine, we've got bumper stickers, we've got pens and keychains and a bunch of posters and a bunch of different stuff for different groups. And we also wanted to put something actually about Fish Passage specifically. So we are really good, right? So yeah, Kaylee made this little thing. So it's a 2-pager, and on the first page, too much. On the, sorry.
I love the balance of graphics and text. Like at a glance, you're like, oh yeah, fish, they live in the ocean and something, but like, it's truly good.
Yeah, so it's like, here's your naturalist fish cycle. It's like Eelder catadromous. I know this is different, but we're not gonna make it different graphic. We have this little map, which I'm sorry that we messed up. The Pratt and Marsh will switch when we print more, but yeah, so that's the first page, and then on the back, it has, you've probably seen this. This is what we made for the NIAFWA conference, of the sort of like benefits of first 2 dams versus like 5 dams, and then a little bit on like the CAC, what does the collaborative do? It's basically what we do, and then it's got the link on the bottom. So anyway, all of our attendees will get a 1-pager of that, and hopefully come away with some understanding of why we're actually there instead of just like getting our faces painted like fish. So yeah.
I wish I had that graphic of this.
Yeah, me too.
I'm gonna email you that.
NIAFWA was so much time and money. It was like a $300 conference to be there for 6 hours, and it was like a 4-hour drive in each direction.
Oh.
And I didn't love it for a lot of reasons, but it did force me to make that. So in the end, I'll take it. Yeah, so that's that. Also, just to say a note, like I've been saying Lonsdale Marsh for years, and I've recently been told I shouldn't say Lonsdale Marsh, I should be saying Valley Falls Marsh.
So that.
Yeah, so some people, I guess.
Says who?
1969. This year's
I think some people consider the entire thing Lonsdale, and some people consider only the upper portion Lonsdale. So I've tried to start saying Valley Falls Marsh so it's more clear to, I think, locals, I guess. Okay. But heads up, okay. Patty McAlpine was like, Steph, I don't know why you're saying this. And I was like, you're the first one to call me out in 3 years, Patty, so I'm very sorry that I said it wrong.
/Lonsdale/ or
Yeah. So are there any updates on Elizabeth Webbing, Hydro, Manville? Hydro, I know, John, you're working on that.
Oh, sorry. Well, the update is that, and Nils did put up on the screen something relative to Elizabeth Webbing, and they've completed the first phase of the Narragansett Bay Estuary Program funding, which is the alternative assessment work. They've done some work with geotech, with sediments. And we have a second award from their advanced advanced program to take what they're completing with the first award to the 60% permit ready design, similar to what's being done at Main Street Slater Mill. Both contracts expired toward the end of the year. For TNC guidance, we were put on pause with any new contracts, but we're now ready to go, and we're going to combine both award into one contract. And I think that looking at perhaps, Nils didn't mention it, but we've given them the rest of the calendar year to finish all of the work on Main Street Slater Mill. Renderings, preparing the permit ready docs, permitting, information back from permitting, and finalizing 60% design. So I think we're looking at giving their schedule going into 2026 for the same thing for Elizabeth Webbing. I think that that's kind of where we want to be.
It's Valley Falls.
With what?
I mean, the area that we're gonna bring fish back to is called Valley Falls Pond. Yeah, it's in Lonsdale.
Yeah.
But it's called Valley Falls.
I don't think anyone else is gonna call us out on it probably, but just,
We
You
should
have
start
to-
calling it Valley Falls.
I just what I'm.
You're going to have to change the entire culture of Rhode Island.
No, I heard it from Patty, who's from Rhode Island. Patty McGowan, who was at
You
BBT.
could just say Valley Falls Pond in Lonsdale.
Anyway,
Like
Okay.
Blackstone to the coast.
thank you. Anything else on, is John Marsland still on? No,
He's-
okay,
sorry. He's driving right now.
Maybe just a quick, nothing new from DEM on this stuff, other than we did have that visit with Alex Kufner from the Providence Journal, which went really well, and we were down at Slater Mill for a little while, walked across the street, and we actually went up to Elizabeth Webbing as well. So I don't think that story is imminent, but Alex seemed really interested in it. So I'll keep tabs on that, and when that article comes out, we'll let you all know.
thanks. Any updates on easements? Any updates on a new contact for Pawtucket?
It's just that Jason guy.
Yeah, so just like what, oh, sorry.
No, you're good. Jason Pizzullo, from what I hear from, it's confusing because he works for the city. He's now the director of, I think it's commerce and planning. It used to be two jobs, which are Sandra, who was the supervisor for Bianca, who's the director of planning. It's now one job, which is Jason.
Director of Commerce, yeah.
But he's now the director, but also the executive director of the PRN.
And that's who we reached out to for the meeting as well. And we have a contact in our office who's friendly with Jason. He worked in Cranston before. So that we're trying to leverage that relationship to kind of get in the door there. So yeah. But that's, what I said earlier, we reached out and we're just waiting to hear back on a date.
The last thing on our agenda is just choosing a new day for our June meeting, because it's on Juneteenth and it's a holiday and I assume that everybody has it off. So question being, do we want to just schedule something else like in that week? or the week after, still on a Thursday in the same time period. Do you want to skip June? These are all options for you. Stop sharing my.
I don't think skipping would be great. I feel like this is one of the very few monthly meetings that I have where every month I get the information. So I think the week before, week after works best for me, but also if it's the week of, it can change things.
Okay, whether I work for the week after.
I'll do Friday instead, Friday the 20th.
Yeah.
We have our collab meeting that morning, so it would have to be in the afternoon. Would it be better if I sent a poll? Will you actually respond? Promise, I will respond. Alright, whoever responds gets the choice of when we're meeting, so. Alright, I'll send a poll.
Can I?
Yeah.
On a related note, the NBEP steering committee has a meeting on the 12th, and folks have been asking for a little while now to come see the project. So I thought the June meeting might be a good opportunity to do that. We don't need fuss and O'Neill there. But just to bring people out to the site, I wanted to ask if we'd be able to, just walk on, see something.
Yeah, you're more than able to walk any, but yeah, if you're looking for like a meeting space or anything, just reach out to me.
Okay. Okay, great. Awesome.
Parking.
Whatever. Yeah, you'd be fine. Just let us know how many you got, stuff
Okay.
like that.
Will do.
Also, I assume Caitlin and I will both be at that meeting, and so we'll get our internal meeting the week before. Okay, anything else that you guys wanna talk about? Okay, I'll send you a poll to reschedule our June meeting and let you know when that is. I'll do that soon. And we'll plan on seeing each other in June, and hopefully I'll see you on Sunday. Weather's looking good. Weather's still looking good. Yeah. Perfect. All right, thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.